Last Man Home, Part 3. Sorry, Dru. I squeezed the trigger, drawing the barrel over his left hand cluster of tentacles, carving away 3 artificial ones and a natural one. Dru's rattle became a wall of sound, and he dropped into the creek, trying to turn one of the weaponized tentacles towards us. 1 second, a split second of bad judgment saved us. He fired high, and in his fall his other tentacles lost their bead, vaporizing creek water instead of flesh. I cut pressure on the trigger, and the light winked out. I twitched my fingertips to drag the barrel harmlessly across Dru's body, and fired again, point-blank bursts where I hoped there were no organs. The rattling stopped, and Dru's eyes winked shut. He kept on tumbling, face first and unconscious, into the creek. Shit! I jumped into the water and reached for him. My Sammies love to swim, but they can't breathe the water. I got underneath him before he was totally submerged, then fell backwards in the mud as he rolled over me. "Help me here," I burbled, brackish water filling my mouth. Seconds later, Dru's weight lessened. I pushed, moved my hands to push harder, and felt cool shell under my hands, pushing with me against a seared cluster of tentacles. Between me and Tom the Bug, we got Dru rolled back up on the muddy bank. Sammies weigh upwards of 300 pounds when they're not soaking wet. By the time we got him out, I was panting and seeing stars, and I was the one that hadn't been shot. I thumbed the rifle's safety back with shaking hands, then slid the pack off my back and dug for my medkit. Tom fell back on his own hind legs, scooping mud towards him with his mid-legs, using his one remaining front limb to rub it into the still-steaming gash in the front of his shell. I leaned back against the bank as I dug for supplies and shoveled air into my lungs, and fast as I could, I slapped a stim patch against the root of Dru's bleeding tentacle cluster. Then I held my breath and shoved another one inside the stinking wound on his thick, scaly side. Dru shuddered as the patches sensed his physiology and released the right combo of emergency medication. I knew from long experience he wasn't hurt enough to go berserk. He'd wake up, he'd be okay, the tentacles would grow back, and we'd all sit around a table next year this time and tease him about the noodles he was growing back. I gave myself a quick pat down, finding no holes. I breathed a little easier, and then I turned to the Bug. "You all right?" He nodded. I swear his head dipped and rose twice, clear as day. That mean yes?" I double-checked. "I am sore, Master Sergeant, but the organs damaged by the Samadon will repair themselves in quick order." Sore. An energy blast to the belly made him sore. I flopped down on the mud. He could have at least had the decency to pass out after the fight like Dru. Still, it was all done, and the burg of Ladysmith and my cottage were still standing. So was I. Mission accomplished. Life could go back to normal now, I thought. Just as Dru roared and speared the earth and air with his tentacles. I tried to push myself away from him, but my hands and feet kept slipping in the mud, getting me nowhere fast. Then the tentacle buried itself in my chest, just under my shoulder blade. Now, I'd been shot, stabbed, poisoned, gassed, almost nuked twice, but I'd never been punctured in hand-to-hand combat. Did I mention I hate surprises? Dru kept on thrashing and roaring after he got me. Tom started screaming and tugging at my shoulder, and I dug like mad in the soggy backpack for as many stim patches as I could lay my hands on. By the time I wrapped my hand on a stack of the patches, the world was on mute. Dru shook me hard enough to send the pack flying, and I was hoping I'd grabbed enough meds to put him all the way out before he did worse to me. I was way past a little sore myself, but I managed to slap 3 more patches on before things went dark. Stupider than most jarheads, and uglier too. I couldn't open my eyes at first. I felt heaviness in my shoulder that I knew was a big medicated hurt, and a weird rocking motion underneath me. But my brain was preoccupied with trying to identify where I was. And oh yeah, who was chewing me out? I was being carried. As usual. "I have the honor of hauling your lacerated gluteus off of the field of battle." The voice was cheery and higher-pitched than I thought it should be. The words sounded recited. They lacked any kind of sarcastic edge I remembered from someone else that said those words before. It was for all this hauling that Tom that was was spared sharing the gym with those sweaty marshmallows, with hard ones for weight machines. My eyes snapped open, and I stared 6 or 7 feet down at leaves and mud, then at the spiky backside of an Alotan in between, and pieced things together in a real hurry. I was being held in a bug's pincer grip, inches away from a lot of poisonous spikes. "Down! Put me down, or so help me!" "You are awake, Master Sergeant. I am glad of it." He. Tom, I reminded myself, complied, settling me down gently on a rock. When I sagged, he planted the stump of his shot-off limb against my shoulder for support. I fought the world out of its death spiral, and I stared at the bug. It all came back to me, how my heroic rescue had been botched, and I'd come out on the losing edge of a mud wrestling with a Sammy. Now I was getting "we'll get you out of here, soldier" speeches from a bug. My eyes went wide, and dry mud cracked loose around them. What about Dru? Did the drugs work? You didn't hurt him, did you? I did nothing to Private Druard. I removed his tentacle from your chest when he fell unconscious, and used the remainder of the contents of your medicine kit to tend your wound. Then I continued down this creek as you intended. I stared at him. You just left him there. You didn't pull him apart or hang him up to bleed out, or... That was the first time Tommy Mark II showed anything close to pissed off. "I will not take life, Sergeant Major. Invest this truth at any credit institution of your choice." He wouldn't kill, and I could take that to the bank? You know, at a certain point, you just stop caring about things that don't add up and you roll with them. Like when a bad guy hauls your mud-covered ass away from certain death at the hands of one of your best friends. I shrugged and felt a tickle from the hole in my shoulder. A tickle. The stim patches would run out in an hour or so, and then I'd be in bed for a week, but they weren't going to keep Dru down for long at all. Judging from how many it took to put him out, he was even stronger now than during the war, so I didn't even know how long I had. I needed to get Tom in a car headed out of town now. Well, my legs still worked. I got walking and planning. I would ship out the nice guy bug while Teddy and Gris headed down to the creek to wake Dru up nice and gentle. I reached for the strap of my rifle, hoping I didn't ever have to use it again, only to discover it wasn't there. Going cold, I felt at my other shoulder. No gun. I cleared my throat to get it working. "Tom, you didn't happen to pick up my rifle back there?" "I did not. I will not use destructive tools," he said reverently. Oh, wow. A hippie bug. The world spun a little, but I kept it together and put a lid on the hysterical laughter I felt building inside. "Let's haul it, Bug Nick," I said, hopping off the rock. I bungled the landing. Tom leaned into my shoulder, holding me up. I surprised myself by letting him take my weight. "Thanks," I said, eyeballing him for a wary second, then jerked my chin further up the creek. "After you." Tom stayed silent all the way to the end of the creek bed, and through the giant corrugated steel tube that ran under the road. We waded through rocks and mud a little further, then I stopped us to grab my breath. "Okay, listen, let me get this straight. You won't kill, and bugs have to kill to get a name, that it?" "I am a Alotan, Master Sergeant, not a bug," he corrected me. Then he nodded, and it was really freaky still to see him do that. "And yes, we must take a life to earn a name." What killed him? What killed Tom? I needed to know. "Give it to me straight, all right?" His eyes blinked slowly. I clued in. He was reliving something painful. Tom that was. Tom took ill last winter. I kept our shelter as warm and dry as I could, but without medicine he could only worsen. Forgive me, I do not know what he suffered from, and Tom would not tell. "So that's it? He dies of the flu and you get a name?" Tom didn't answer. "Tell me the rest," I demanded. All the bug's eyes closed again, and stayed closed. "Alotans require much less rest than humans, but once asleep we are unable to rouse ourselves." His claws raked bark from a tree as he talked. I went to sleep, expecting to have him succumb in the night. But instead I woke to his face near mine, several of my spikes sunk in his skin. I don't know how he held on until I woke. He told me it was his choice, this act, and then he screamed, to attract our guards, so that they would see, so they would believe I had taken his life. The poison took him slowly. Before the end, he made me promise to take his name. We were as brothers, and Tom that was sacrificed himself so that I may drink your beers and tell again those jokes which kept him alive through telling me when there was nothing else for him to live for. Does this satisfy your curiosity, Master Sergeant? My eyes misted up as I thought of the Tom I knew, a guy who always took the rap for the botched missions and the men who broke curfew. Once he even did a stint in the stockade to keep a good man from a dishonorable discharge. Going out the way Tom number 2 described? Well, it fit. Better than fit. It was a good end for a good man, instead of a mangled battlefield death or being forgotten in some alien POW camp. Yeah, I'm satisfied. I took a deep breath and blinked the near tears away. Come on, let's go. We dug our way slowly through the trees, careful to keep him away from the road. He held branches out of my way while he waited for me to pass, careful not to snap any off. I got angry again that this bug was still walking around when Tom wasn't, but now I knew it was the grief talking, not hate. I was burying Tom in my head all over again, and it hurt like a son of a bitch. Thinking of how he sacrificed himself got me angry in a way I hadn't been since before the war, since I lost track of what was good and bad, and let myself substitute us and them. That's why I lived in a one-hydrogen cell-charged town. All I wanted was to be left alone. Let the rest of the galaxy go to hell, I always said, so long as it left me alone. But on this day, it was my job to protect a good man. To protect what a good man, one of the best I'd ever known, had given his life for. I'd be damned if my lieutenant's death was going to be for nothing. This bug was going to live. I stepped under Tom's arms, careful of his spikes. Thanks. Of course, Master Sir. I'll the hell with it. If you're going to be what passes for Tom, you ought to call me Jake, I said, gritting my teeth as I pushed along through a thorny bush towards the general store. We ran out of forest pretty soon. I snuck a look from behind a bush with decent cover, and I saw the back of the old trailer propped up on jacks in the parking lot between us and the store. Okay. I pointed to the back door of the old cinder block building, propped open with a case of bottle returns. You run inside. You see a big metal door on your left. That's the cooler. You get in, and you shut the door, and you stay there. Understand? Tom caught on. I will remain hidden, so as not to antagonize Dru any further. I nodded. Meantime, I'll call Teddy and Gris, get a car up here. The coast looked clear. No stopping until you're inside, clear. Here we go. I sprinted for the door. Jake Behringer, now why are you running? I ran right past Mario, sprawled in a folding chair beside another case of bottles in front of his trailer. He lived there all through the year, keep people from running off with his stock. You hear about the fire down by the lake, mon ami? Hey, you know my store's closed Sunday, why? Dieu! In the corner of my vision, I saw the store owner fall out of his chair, spilling beer over a white belly, falling out beneath a Hawaiian shirt. He righted the bottle, then crossed himself with the same hand, amber liquid sloshing as he gaped at the Alotan chasing me across his parking lot. Jake, mon ami, run fast! Mario shrieked at my back. I heard a crash, but didn't stop until I was inside, grabbing the door frame with my good arm to stop. I looked back in time to watch a second beer bottle shatter against Tom's shell, but he kept up an eerie four-legged run just like I told him to. Mario was likely more drunk than brave, but he was standing his ground in his beer-stained shirt and swearing in thick Quebecois accent. He was fishing for a third bottle when Dru landed on the roof of his trailer, firing 2 beams into Tom's back, while another half-dozen tentacles spread spider-like over the aluminum roof for balance. Tabernacle! Mario's nerve broke, and he scrambled down on all fours to grab his case of beer and haul it under the trailer with him. That trailer swayed under Dru's impact, and the beams arced away from Tom. Dru's angry little rattle filled the air as Tom made it inside. I kicked the case of empties from the door, yanking it shut just as I heard Dru jump to the ground on the other side. I pulled the steel bar into position across the heavy fireproof door just before Dru hit it. Dust flew, and I swore, terrified, but the door held. Tom had been hit again. The back of his shell was sizzling. I knelt over him and saw steam rising in the dim light. Then I slapped for the light switch, and the fluorescence flickered on. I swore again, this time in amazement. There were little divots in his shell, but no internal damage. The air smelled like hops and barley as more beer evaporated from where the bottles had hit, instead of like cooked bug. Oh, thank you, Mario. I shouldered through the swinging door into the front of the store. The metal night door was rolled down and locked to the floor at the front, and all the windows had bars across them, even the skylight. I took a minute to rest against the long counter stretching the length of the back wall on either side of the swinging door, then stumbled behind the counter to the right looking for the phone. Something skittered across the roof as I fumbled the portable off the hook and ran to help Tom. "Up!" I barked as I got in back, as loud as I could, but I was gentle as I grabbed a mid-limb to help. He gripped my forearm just as carefully, letting me take some of his weight. "Jake, you must leave. Private Druard is confused, and you will be hurt if you stay." I chuckled as I reached past him and jerked open the cooler door. "You thinking of this now, Tom?" He took more of his own weight, leaning against the wall-length cooler. "The private is bringing the fight to me, Jake. It is wrong of me to endanger anyone else's line to protect mine." I felt my head spin as if the old Tom that was, had given me a battlefield cuff in the head. For the first time since I'd heard the name of his species, I saw an Alotan, and I didn't feel a trace of the hate I'd been taught. I stared deep into the bug eye closest to me, blue-white surrounding a tiny pinpoint of black. This Tom was hurting and scared, and he was still asking me to leave him to die. Well, I knew right then that just wasn't going to happen. Stay tuned for more Last Man Home, or visit servingworlds.com for more stories or to buy the ebook. Thank you.